adding details to paragraphs. Often students have problems with underdeveloped paragraphs. An underdeveloped paragraph has too few sentences to make a strong point, and generally speaking, fewer than 5 sentences in a paragraph would be too short. The typical academic paragraph might have 8 to 10 sentences or more. An underdeveloped paragraph also lacks description and details that are necessary to prove the point of that paragraph, and it often does not reflect the purpose of the paper. This presentation will give students skills on using narration or description in order to add such details to the paper. The first thing that we want to do is kind of map out our concepts, and I've done that with color on this screen. The first color is blue, and that represents the topic sentence or the main idea of the paragraph. The topic sentence always contains the main idea of the paragraph, and it helps point back to the main point or blend in to the main point of the thesis statement. The second color that you'll note on these slides is green, and that represents the supporting details or multiple points that support the main idea of the paragraph. Generally speaking, a person should have 2 or 3 main supporting points that help support the topic sentence of the paper. And the third color that will be represented in the presentation is orange. Orange represents points that are supported with example or description. They are ideas and points and examples that help analyze the supporting points. Before you see an example paragraph that has each of these items, the blue, the main point of the paragraph or the topic sentence, the green representing the major support details, and the orange representing places where the person has elaborated on those support details. This is an example paragraph from a paper about what services Habitat for Humanity and banks should offer to their applicants. I'm going to read this paragraph aloud. The first step in the application process is to establish need through an application and a credit report. The application includes conditions of the current residence, but it also helps families begin recording their monthly expenses. Whether the family qualifies or not, Habitat should review the credit reports not only with the Family Selection Committee, but specifically review them with the families. Many of these skills are basics learned in the middle school and high school, but most preteens and teens might understand the math, but probably not apply that understanding by the time they reach adulthood and have expenses of their own. Okay, this paragraph really goes at a surface level. The first sentence explains the application process, and 2 of the main points help explain what the purpose of the application and potentially the credit report is. The other point explains that a committee might review that and talk about the credit reports and whether the family is qualified or not. But it also emphasizes that the next step is to talk with the family itself. The orange support points allude back to a time in high school, possibly, when those skills are reviewed. But the truth is that a lot of people do not understand how to do basic budgeting, and it doesn't give us any real color to what the intent is of the paragraph. So in other words, this explains some basics, but it leaves out a lot of details. This is an example of a first draft paragraph. So how does a person add examples that will help make the main point and possibly bring out some other support details? Well, going back to rhetorical modes such as narration, comparison or contrast, definition, causal analysis, problem solution, illustration, process analysis, and there are many more different rhetorical modes. These are a few of the basics. Going back and using those rhetorical modes helps a person think through what details are present, what details are missing, what might give the reader a better picture or a better description of what can happen here. In the next example, what we're going to do is we're going to take those same sentences from the original example and we're going to add a little bit of description into it. And that's going to help us see, oh, here's how I could explain this idea a little better. following example paragraph with descriptive details, you'll notice that some of the main ideas from the other example paragraph are here, but they are expanded upon with more orange or supportive and exemplary details, as well as some other main points. The first step in the application process is to establish need through an application and a credit report. The application includes conditions of the current residence, but it also helps families begin recording monthly expenses. This information shows Habitat whether the family spends within its means or carries debt from month to month, and it helps predict if the family will be able to manage expenses. Often, banks and some Habitat affiliates do not spend time running through the numbers with the family to make a plan to eliminate debt and focus on needs. Whether the family qualifies or not, Habitat should review credit reports not only within the family selection committee, but specifically review them with the families. Many of these skills are basics learned in middle school and high school, but most preteens and teens might understand the math, but probably will not apply that understanding by the time they reach adulthood and have expenses of their own. Too often the information is lost or left unrecalled, and the family struggles to create a simple budget for current needs and saving for the future. How much more descriptive is that paragraph than the original? Considerably more descriptive, right? The details elaborate pointedly. They draw pictures. They describe what the issues are so much better than the original paragraph. And so when we're given a little bit more information, we can help evaluate or weigh some advantages or strategies a little bit better. This final example paragraph has narrative details. Narrative details would be anecdotes, stories, basic narration, which differs from the last example because those were primarily examples and basic description. Let me read this one, and I want you to think about how this connects to the reader or provides a better picture of the details than the other two examples do. The first step in the application process is to establish need through an application and a credit report. The application includes conditions of a current residence, but it also helps families begin recording their monthly expenses. This information shows Habitat whether a family spends within its means or carries debt from month to month, and it helps predict if the family will be able to manage expenses. Often, banks and some Habitat affiliates do not spend time running through the numbers with the family to make a plan to eliminate debt and focus on needs. Whether the family qualifies or not, Habitat should review credit reports not only with the Family Selection Committee, but specifically review them with the families. Nikki remembers learning those skills in high school, but like most people, since they were only practiced on worksheets, she does not think about them when she goes grocery shopping with her kids. She has a list of groceries, but often lets her children and husband talk her into at least $20 of unplanned items each week, and they have not paid off the credit cards they use for groceries in more than 6 months. She forgets how these little things impact her shopping. Bank or Habitat affiliate should offer classes that help people like Nikki learn tips for shopping and paying off debt, which would add to the well-being of their potential future homeowners and community at large. I might not include in my final draft all of these details. I want you to compare this and think about adding a person in here. I want you to think about how much more concrete the examples become. If you can put yourself in Nikki's shoes, you're already anticipating she should be going off the list and nothing else, or those things should make it to the list beforehand. The examples are a lot more concrete and a lot more helpful, and it connects to the audience a little bit differently than certain examples and just basic description do. Although basic description is quite often what you need, sometimes just offering a little point through narration, through a situation, can help people connect to your argument a little bit better. That last sentence became extremely important to bring it back to the idea of the bank and Habitat being responsible, and that idea that instead of talking over facts and figures with the committee and then just telling a family no, they can't have a house, that instead they should review them and that it doesn't just impact them, Habitat, or the bank in general, but it's better for the community as a whole long term, because maybe someone who's able to learn budgeting doesn't even need to go through Habitat eventually. Maybe they can find a conventional loan through a bank after just making good practices after a while. So I've just shared with you a few tips about adding details into the paragraph. My biggest piece of advice would be to get back into your Comp 1 book and to look at all the different rhetorical modes and ways that you can express an idea. Just start brainstorming and maybe change out, maybe I want to take Nikki out of there, and maybe I want to study cause and effect a little more closely about the cause of overspending is not sticking to a budgeting list. And maybe I want to write out something that has to do with the cause of overspending. Maybe I want to look at it in more of a problem and solution, which I already have a little bit of that in there, but maybe I want to emphasize the problem and solution issue a little bit more. So if I looked back into my books, I could find a lot of examples that would help me develop the paragraph better. The final piece of advice I want to offer is that just think about that one paragraph. You have seen 3 versions of it so far, and I would bet that to really write that paragraph well, you would see upwards of 5 or 6 or 7 versions of that paragraph just to get it right, just to get it down and to make it feel like it's a strong paragraph. And for some of you, you might be able to get that in the first or second round, but a majority of us realistically are going to need multiple attempts at getting just the right description in there. So don't be shy about brainstorming. Don't be shy about rewriting and revising. That's a natural in the writing process.